All right. So there's so much to talk about in this whole thing. But you think, and motive is one of the things I want to know about so much, and you believe it has something to do with genetics. That's one item anyway.
Well, I'm not sure about genetic. I mean, there may be a genetic line that they're following, because usually if you are taken, your children will be taken, your parents usually are involved, or there may be a spiritual line as well. I mean, there may be, if you're talking one life, if you start talking reincarnation, the whole game changes. And the example I always show that's critical to this is if you can find one abduction case that goes back before birth, the whole game changes. And the example I always show is the story of the Moody Blues, the famous band, the Moody Blues.
I love them, yes.
Clearly abducted in 1967. Their story is quite well known. And Mike Pinder, who's the lead for the Moody Blues and the lead guitarist, go to Colin Andrews after one of his crop circle lectures and say, we want to talk to you. We want to tell you a story. And they go out for dinner, and Colin says they're going back and forth between Pinder and the lead guitarist, back and forth and back and forth. They're telling this story that before they were born, they knew that they were going to be musicians. And they told this story about being on this craft, and that there was these elder people, and they were told they were going to put lyrics into songs that would raise consciousness, and this whole thing. And this changes everything. If people can remember, and a number of experiencers, I can't remember what the exact percentage, but it's pretty high. It's like 20 or 30% of people, experiencers, will talk about remembering before they were born. And so,
all right, again, I'm going to slow you up. This is pretty important stuff. Are you saying that if you become a true believer in reincarnation, the Buddhists, of course, believe in reincarnation, that you are then likely to be a subject of visitation?
Well, you make a deal to come in here. The whole idea is abduction. You're saying, if you say abduction, that these people are taken against their will, I would say, and Mary Rodwell, who's done over 2,000 regressions in Australia, would say that if you ask the person during the regression and you get them in deep hypnosis and you say, at any point in the past, did you agree to be in this situation? They will say, yes, I agree to this. It's not an abduction. This was something. It's if you believe in reincarnation, Art, you came into this life to do something. Maybe you came in just to learn jealousy or greed or whatever, some sort of lesson. But if you are an experiencer, the question is, did you come in here? Did you volunteer to be an experiencer, to come in here to raise consciousness, to bring this alien message to the world? We came in here, if you believe in reincarnation, we came in here to do something. And so what I say is, when I see an experiencer, I see people who are very high-level spiritual beings who have chosen this mission to do what they're doing, that this is not some victim type thing. And if you take a look at the polls, Edgar Mitchell has a support group for experiencers, and in the poll that was done, they had 1,200 experiencers fill out this poll. In there, only 9% of experiencers say that they would turn it around if they had the chance to not have this experience happen. There's only less than 10% say, yeah, I would not want this to happen. Most of them would say, yeah, I'd do this again. That experiencers, I'd say, are very, very important people.
You said you talked to Travis Walton, right?
What's that?
You talked to Travis, right?
Yes,
Walton?
I've talked to Travis, yes.
What do you think he'd say if he was asked, do you want this to happen again?
I think he's changed. I think he would say he sees the benefits of this. He
really?
thinks that something good was going on.
Really? I mean, what he described, Grant, was kind of a horror. Frankly, I mean, he was trapped in this web-like junk. Oh God, I thought it was awful.
Well, that was the movie that put this stuff about. He talked about the fact he couldn't breathe, and when they did the movie, they changed it to this stuff over his face.
Well, it's
they
scary.
Changed that whole thing. I think when you interview him, ask him that question.
I will.
Do you see any positive aspects to this? I would say that he sees that there are some positive aspects to this. To me, it's very important that what these people are doing. When I did my first consciousness lecture in Phoenix, Arizona, I had a woman. I don't know if you've ever gone into the life between life stuff of Dr. Michael Newton, who did 7,000 regressions of people and took them into the between lives. I had a woman who went and did one of these regressions after she heard my lecture. And in that regression, she was asked, did you volunteer to be an experiencer? She said, I didn't volunteer. I earned it. I worked hard to be in this position. That this is, I see these people as very high level people. They're bringing a message to the world. They're doing something to me that's very valuable. But we've come to the world. If you believe in reincarnation, we've come to the world to do something. We've got some sort of lesson to do, and so I see that part. I don't see really much random. I don't think I randomly saw UFOs in the wrong place at the wrong time or the right place at the right time. That's why I say if you see a UFO, you're part of the game. You're part of what this whole thing's all about.
I wonder if I am. I do.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
in a way, when you think about it, the experience drove me much harder to talk about all this kind of thing. So maybe you're right. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you've had your thing. You've done a major mission in getting the word out and getting people talking about it. And I think that's all they're trying to do is they're trying to get people to talk about it. I firmly believe that if there are as many civilizations as we now sort of guess that there might be in the universe, like billions or trillions of civilizations that are running around, they may have done this 1,000 times on 1,000 different planets. They know exactly what they're going to do, because if you take a look at the pattern, you will see that I've been in this a long time. You've been in this a long time. I know in 1975, what happened then doesn't happen now. We had landing traces in the 1970s where they'd land and they'd leave the pod marks and the burned grass. Doesn't happen anymore. In those days, there was people seeing aliens looking out windows of crafts. Doesn't happen anymore. The patterns have all changed. We had Foo Fighters during World War II. What happened to the Foo Fighters? Where did they go? After World War II, we had the green fireballs. What happened to the green fireballs?
Actually, there have been recent Foo Fighter sightings. Since you brought it up, I'll dig that story out.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to slow you down. Let me slow you down for just a second. Reincarnation, Grant, is almost a religious conviction. Would you say that is right?
Well, I don't know what you mean by that. I mean,
well, it's almost an article of faith.
Well, I mean, you have the research done at the University of Virginia, 2,500 cases where you have kids who are like 3-4 years old.
I know.
I would say that's scientific evidence. I wouldn't say that's any sort of religious faith. I mean, there's a lot of evidence for reincarnation.
Well, but a lot of people believe in reincarnation as an article of faith, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, everybody believes in something. And belief doesn't change reality, whatever people believe. I mean, everybody has a set belief, and that's critical to...
Okay, so you're almost saying nonsense. It's science fact, not faith.
It has a lot of evidence for it.
That's a pretty big stretch to say that, but it could be. May I ask, has your work in this field affected your own religion or your own faith or your own thinking?
Oh, absolutely. As I said, it absolutely turned my whole life around. I mean, it was completely 180 degrees. And then after my download experience, another 180 degrees. It affected my whole life. My life has never been the same since I saw my first UFO.
Well, actually, if you had 280 degree shifts, you're right back where you began, right back where you started.
I started before I got into UFOs. I was interested in Edgar Cayce, and I was interested in near-death studies. I had done a study at a hospital where I'd gone to study dying cancer patients and stuff like that, and asked all these questions about near-death work. I've come right back to where I started back in the 1970s. I had no interest in UFOs, none whatsoever. The only reason I went out to see this UFO thing was because the whole town was seeing it. It was a viral story in the city where I lived, and I went out believing I wouldn't see anything. And when I saw it, I just literally could not believe what I had seen.
Oh, I so totally get that. Honest, I do, Grant. What I want you to do is hold tight. We're going to do an early break. Gives us a little more time on the other side. All right, Grant Cameron is my guest, and Grant, several have sent wormhole messages saying, Art, very interesting, but, well, try to slow him down a little bit. The information is coming too fast. Can you do that?
Sure.
You've probably had more coffee than I have, but I drink a lot. I mean, you're just rattling it out, and we've got time. Don't worry. It'll all get out. So I'm particularly interested in the reincarnation angle. It would seem to me, if that's true, Buddhists who really believe in reincarnation would have a disproportionate number of abductions or contacts. Yes?
I don't know. No, I don't. You'd have to look at the stats. The only stats we really have is the poll that was done. The poll is being done by the Edgar Mitchell organization.
Okay.
Let me give you a question. Question 185. 413 people replying. The question is, do you believe that there is a connection between ETs and reincarnation? These are the experiencers. These are the people that are involved. 79% yes.
Wow. Well, of course, they're probably on a site that kind of leans that way anyway, right?
A site? Well, no, these are people that are being questioned. Well, what's happened is they've gone to the experiencers to find out the common elements in the experiencers.
All right, but what I'm saying is these are experiencers, so you would expect it to be skewed in that direction. For example, if somebody were to ask me a question, I've had a close encounter, and I'm going to answer yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
I think so. That's fair. All right, so if you would, give me this thing that I'm hearing about with you about Vice President Dick Cheney. Incidentally, they just found out where he was hiding. There's something to do with Cheney and UFOs. What's up?
Well, I had the opportunity to talk to Dick Cheney. I had been interested in who had the answer to what I had seen in 1975. I had a sighting.
Right.
I wrote a manuscript. The local publisher where I am said, Mr. Cameron, you may believe in this kind of stuff. Count me among the unbelievers. I was no longer interested in sightings, couldn't care less. All I was interested in is who knew what I had seen. So I went up the chain of command. I went to the Canadian government. Then I went to the former president of Penn State University, Dr. Eric Walker, who indicated he knew what was going on. Then I went up to the president. I figured, well, the president must know what's going on. And it was at that point when I got the opportunity to talk on a radio talk show, ask a question of former Vice President Dick Cheney. What had happened was Bush was running for president with Cheney.
Mm-hmm.
He had come up against a guy named Charles Huffer, who had a tape recorder going, and said, Mr. Bush, if you become president, are you going to release the UFO information?
Mm-hmm.
Bush said, yes, I will. Cheney was standing right beside him, and he said, this is Cheney. He's a very smart guy. He was Secretary of Defense. It'll be the first thing he does when he gets to the White House. So when he got to the White House in April of 2001, he was on a radio talk show, the Diana Rehm Show in Washington, D.C. I got on the air and I asked him the question, which I say you have to ask any four-star general, vice president, or president. You don't want to ask him, have you seen a UFO? Who cares? You don't want to know what you think about UFOs. Who cares? The only question you want to ask him is the briefing question.
Right.
At any point, did anybody walk in and brief you? The briefing is the truth. Did anybody walk in your office, swear you to secrecy, and tell you what's going on? So I said to him, Mr. Cheney, in all your jobs in government, and Cheney had been the chief of staff for President Gerald Ford. He had been Secretary of Defense under Bush Sr., and when I talked to him, he was the vice president. He was in the White House when he answered the question. I said, in any of your jobs in government, have you ever been briefed on the subject of UFOs?
Right.
If so, when was it, and what were you told? And Cheney hesitated, and he said, if I had been briefed on that subject, it would probably be classified, and I wouldn't be talking about it. And that's what it's all about. It's classified. They aren't going to talk about it. It's like nuclear weapon secrets. They're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, but they made a campaign promise.
Bush made the campaign promise, but it was Cheney that I asked the question. And Cheney said exactly what the situation is. It's classified. He's not going to talk about it.
I don't suppose you recorded that, did you?
It's on the Diana Rehm website. We have it, yes.
God, I would love to hear that. I would love to hear it.
In fact, you interviewed me when it happened.
We could have. Well, too bad. I guess you didn't get an opportunity to do a follow-up, did you?
Well, no, because they cut me off.
Yeah,
I didn't even hear the answer to the question. They cut me off immediately. And then what happened was Diana Rehm, who's running the show, said, Mr. Cheney, have you ever had any meetings on UFOs since you got in the White House? And at that point, he sort of caught his ground, and he said, no, we've had no UFO meetings since I got to the White House. and I don't think he ever went on a radio talk show after that. I mean, because the next 5 questions after my question about the UFOs were all on Halliburton, how he was ripping people off with Halliburton, and he was furious by the end of that show.
I bet he was, yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's what it comes down to, is it's classified. The metal is classified, how they get here is classified, and the consciousness thing, which is the key element, that in 1947, as I said, the Canadian government said, we're told by high-level American officials in 1950, before anybody talked to an alien, that mental phenomena was involved. How did the American officials know that mental phenomena was involved? Because in 1947, they recovered a craft in Roswell, New Mexico, and one of the aliens was alive. And when they went to recover the craft, the alien was talking in their heads. And that's the most highly classified part to me, is if you can figure out how to talk in someone's head, you can go to Putin, you can go to anybody and make them think they're talking to God. That's this tremendous technology, this whole consciousness thing, the fact that aliens are telepathic and that they can put messages and control people's minds. This is highly important stuff. That's why it's so highly classified.
Well, if they can actually do that, why don't they do it to achieve their goals, which, if you listen to abduction stories, would seem to be A, to stop us from blowing ourselves to smithereens, and B, to do something about the state of the planet right now.
Okay, the Canadian government, the guy that ran the Canadian government program, his name was Wilbert Smith. He was a contactee. Most people don't know that. He was a contactee. He was in contact with an alien by the name of Alpha, and he's the guy that ran the Canadian government flying saucer program. What he said the aliens had told him, and I've heard this from other sources as well, is that the only time they will ever step in, there's this non-intervention thing, the only time they will ever step in is if there is a nuclear exchange. And this is what Wilbur Smith had been told by his alien contact. And what he was told was if there's a nuclear exchange, they would step in. Otherwise, they are going to allow the human race to stew in their own juices. You cannot do your children's homework. You have to allow people to learn their own lessons. And if we happen to wipe ourselves out, so be it. If reincarnation is a fact, we go someplace else and learn our lessons all over. They are here not to save us. They are not. This is not American military foreign policy where we're going to go in to a foreign third world country, bring them freedom, democracy, Jesus, and McDonald's. They're here, I think, only to save the planet. We are, as David Bohm, the famous physicist, said, we are the locusts. We are like a swarm of locusts that has descended upon the earth. And they are basically here to try to stop us from, or to educate us to stop what we're doing to the planet. I don't think they're really here to save us. They're here to save the planet.
Well, Grant, dead is dead. And, you know, if we destroy the planet, make it unlivable for human beings, we might as well go ahead and have the nuclear exchange. So my question to you is, if it came to that, if somebody, Putin maybe, he's pretty nutty, if he pressed the button, it's your view they would step in and what? Not allow these things to launch, take them out during the launch phase, or what?
Shut them down just like they did Malmstrom. Shut the whole thing down, or as they did in Russia, actually start the clock and let them run down and scare the living daylights of everybody. They can. This is the whole deal. Wilbur Smith said that he had been told that they could stop a nuclear exchange, and if we didn't believe it, they could take the moon in front of the entire human race, split it in half, and put it back together again to prove that they could stop a nuclear exchange. But that is the only time they will step in, is if there's a nuclear exchange. Otherwise, it's hands off. We have to learn our own lessons. And that's where this whole thing with experiencers, if you have multiple lives, that these people are volunteering to come in so that you don't have this non-intervention thing. These people are coming in to help. They're part of this process to raise the consciousness from the ground up. You can't indirectly. That's to me, that's American foreign policy, that we're going to go in and tell people what to do and stuff. And because it doesn't work, we know it doesn't work in Iraq. We know it doesn't work in Pakistan and all these places, that eventually you end up where you're in bunkers, and the only time you come out is when you're an armored personnel carriers. The aliens cannot take over. They cannot come in here and directly influence us, because we would not allow it. You're not going to allow someone else to come in and take over your world or your country. So they're doing it, coming in through the back door. They may have tried to come to the government, which I think they did on a number of occasions. But after that, they're coming in through people who have volunteered to help them on this mission.
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If a saucer came down, pick your place, White House lawn, I maintain that when the ramp came down and the little guy got about halfway down the ramp, he'd be filled with so much lead, Grant, that they'd have a hard time carrying him away. In other words, we are a very, very warrior-like nation. There's no getting around it.
Yeah. Plus, nobody wants somebody else to come into their country. I mean, that's why we have so much trouble in the Middle East is we're in there. And, I mean, if you were someone, then your neighbor, your parents got killed or your sister, you'd be angry and you'd want these people out of your country. This is the idea is that you don't want people in here. And the other problem that we have that I say that the government really doesn't want any part of this is the fact that I just wrote a book called Alien Bedtime Stories. And one of the stories I talk about, the articles I wrote is, are the aliens commies? And if you take a look in the early 1950s, when you had Adamski and Williamson, the FBI was following these guys around because the message that the aliens are bringing is not a capitalist message. It is a message of oneness. It is a message that the one is more important than the individual, and that we have to stop this growth, this capitalist growth. This would not be very well received in America, the message that the aliens
are putting out. Well, if that really is their message, they do sound like commies.
Exactly. They're talking about the Gaia, the world is more important than some rich guy who wants to build a nuclear power plant in the middle of San Francisco.
Okay, well, if all that's true, then double the amount of lead I said the little guy would get.
Well, yeah, exactly. People think that we make it public and everybody's going to be happy and we're going to, be able to drive big cars again. It's not what's going to happen. There's a lot of things that aren't going to go well if this does get released. I mean, Trump hates the Mexicans. I mean, can you imagine how he's going to hate the aliens?
No, that's
when
not
they come
fair.
With
that's not.
Wait.
Not fair. I'm not on Trump's side, but he's never said he hates Mexicans.
No.
He hates our immigration policy.
Yeah, and it's this us versus them, that we are that it's the outsiders that are causing sort of the trouble.
Yes.
It used to be the Vietnamese, and then it was the Chinese, and then it was the Russians, and it's this idea. It's this the message that the aliens are bringing is a oneness message, and it's the message that we are all one, that we're all leaves on the same tree. Not the idea that the message that is being promoted in communism is this survival of the fittest, rape, pillage, and steal whatever you can. Whoever's got the most toys wins. It's this growth thing. And David Bohm, this great physicist, who was not a UFO guy, basically said he didn't think we were going to make it, because basically what you have is a model where you need growth all the time, and the growth keeps going, and now you've got China starting to have this high growth, and India. And eventually, David Bohm says we're going to run out of resources, whether we destroy the planet.
Well, yeah, I'm not an optimist. I don't like the way things are going. Hold tight, Grant. We're at a break point. You can relax for a bit. Take 5, as they say. I'm Art Bell.
For Dark Matter News, I'm Leo Ashcraft. Canadians have created a giant wall that sucks carbon dioxide straight out of the air. Created by the Canadian company Carbon Engineering, this wall could be built to draw carbon dioxide straight out of the air and convert it into fuel.
We're capturing CO2 with it right now. And by the time we get to the outlet here, where these fans pull the air through the contactor, over 80% of the CO2 has been removed. We're trapping over 100 kilos of CO2 here every day, and that CO2 gets absorbed into our solution and forms a type of carbonate salt.
Air flows through a row of massive fans that are connected to a carbon dioxide-rich solution. This then absorbs carbon compounds out of the air. This solution is purified with the carbon dioxide within it extracted, and then purified again for reuse. The research and engineering firm hoped to build such walls where regrowth of trees simply isn't possible. They did it in the 60s, and they're still doing it. A strange gray UFO has caused something of a stir in the conspiracy community after NASA caught the object on its ISS live feed camera and then promptly cut the live feed as soon as it appeared. The small gray object is seen coming up over the horizon and then disappearing just moments later as NASA cuts the feed and switches to another of the cameras, and will no doubt fuel conspiracy theorists' belief that NASA is deliberately hiding footage of potential UFOs. One of the simplest theories to this conundrum is that it's an artifact on the lens, or indeed the moon. The YouTuber responsible for the video, StreetCap1, doesn't hold with that either, posting a second video that he says proves that it couldn't be the moon. The biggest mystery, however, is why NASA didn't just use duct tape to cover it up. That's what they did before, after all. Right? I'm Leo Ashcraft, and this is Dark Matter News. A former state trooper from Washington said on Wednesday that he is currently in contact with several Bigfoot creatures and that he feeds them food regularly. The man, who provided a name but chose to remain anonymous, said that the encounters had been happening since 2009 in a remote area in the North Cascades. He said sometimes it's 5 to 10 minutes, other times they stay for hours. He says he leaves them apples, carrots, beef jerky, cookies, and candy bars. The man says he was looking for an old mine in the mountains the first time he came across the alleged beings in 2009. After leaving the food out there for him, he says they seem to have started following him and getting closer. He says he's been as close as 20 feet to some of them. He reports that he was so close to them that he was able to catch some of their language on 2 different occasions. He said it sounded like Native American and an Asian mix. The creatures reportedly stand between 6 and 7 feet tall and probably weigh in at about 500 pounds, females being a little lighter. He describes them as having a human face, some with dark hair, others red or brown, probably about 3 to 4 inches long, adding that the females had small breasts. He claims he's not the only one to have seen the creatures in the area. Numerous people have also purportedly seen them while accompanying the man. The former state trooper says the creatures have never presented a threat to him and that he leaves them alone and he's not interested in hunting them or gathering physical evidence. Florida resident John Bird last year claimed to feed Bigfoot potatoes and plantains on a regular basis. In the spring of 1982, a soldier training at Fort Leonard Wood Army Base in Missouri claimed to have spotted a 7-foot-tall creature with brown hair that resembles the former state trooper's alleged sighting. Portions on the United States side of the range are part of the North Cascades National Park. Earlier this week, there were reports revealing the intentions of the U.S. Army to annex part of the region as a helicopter training area, drawing criticism from the Forest Service employees for environmental ethics. I'm Leo Ashcraft. This has been Dark Matter News.
Grant Cameron is my guest, and I've got to wonder if they came down, landed, and somehow in a worldwide way dispensed their message, the alien message of we're all one. You know, the sort of communistic message. How would Fox cover that? You got to wonder. Well, okay, Grant, welcome back. This really is fascinating stuff, absolutely fascinating. There are also experiencers, I understand, who report the very same sort of thing having been near death.
Yeah, it's a staggering figure. 35% of all people who claim to be experiencers who've had the abduction experience or encounter with aliens are reporting at the same time that they've had a near-death experience.
And much the same message dispensed.
Well, I'm really not sure what the message they got in the near-death experience, but it is the same sort of oneness type thing where... The weird thing that I find about it is there was actually a panel that's been set up to figure out how can you possibly have these two things together, and that's where this idea comes from about the fact that it may be chosen, that you, when you came into this life, you chose to be an experiencer and you also chose to have a near-death experience because you know that there are people who can predict the future. So people can predict the future. It would indicate that the future is somewhat set, that it's not like random events, which is what we're sort of taught, that everything's random and it's meaningless. But if you have, if I can predict that you're going to have a car accident tomorrow, and you have a near-death experience, well, then that wasn't a random event.
Right.
So it may be that near-death experiences and abduction experiences are not random events, that a person comes into this life and chooses to have both. And that's why you have this very high percentage, which puzzles a lot of people in the UFO community, how you can have so many people that have these two apparently random events happening that are so bizarre. And I just say, to me, it makes sense that they're not random.
How many abductees do you think there are in totality?
Okay. The Roper poll that was financed by Bob Bigelow in 1991
right.
Came up with conservatively in the United States of America 2%, which on 320 million people would be 6.4 million experiencers. And that's conservative. I think most people in the field consider that to be a conservative estimate of experiencers. And the weird thing about that is that 43% of those experiencers are reporting downloads.
Mm-hmm.
That it's 2.7 million people, that experiencers who are reporting getting mathematical, technical, or scientific material in their heads that they did not learn in school or through any other means.
Okay, here's a good question for you. Bob Bigelow is a friend of mine.
Yeah.
I know him very well. Yeah. I've been inside some of his, what are going to be spacecraft. Now, he's a real serious guy, Brad. Yeah. Real serious guy.
Yeah.
And he was investigating this kind of thing you're talking about right now. He conducted a number of very important polls, one of which you just mentioned. And then suddenly, Bob Bigelow stopped doing that kind of research and began using his considerable wealth to get into space. He's going to build space hotels. He's doing all kinds of really serious stuff. What do you think caused him, Grant, if you were to guess, probably just have to guess unless you've talked to him, what made him stop investigating all of that and move towards space?
I really don't know. I don't know that he's really done that. I mean, I know he put a lot of money into consciousness. He had the chair for consciousness studies at UNLV. He put millions of dollars into that.
Oh, yes. Yes, he did a long period of that,
Bob. I'm sure he still has the UFO interest because he had his, I think it was his parents had this UFO encounter.
Yes.
And you know that once you get the bug, you...
but again, Grant, I'm telling you, he has changed. He has dropped...
Yeah. Okay.
It's like he came to some conclusion, Grant, and then he switched. Now, I'd love to have Bob, and I would love to get Bob to ask him that question.
Yeah.
But it's a big turn, I'm telling you. He's in aerospace now.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I really don't know. I mean, I know he was in when he still had NIDS. I know he was into the aerospace thing. I talked to his chief physicist when I was there.
Yes.
And so I really don't know why the change. I just know he was extremely interested in consciousness.
Oh, yes.
And he understands how this all fits together, that it's not just a physical phenomena, that this is much more complex.
Yes.
It's almost like Jacques Vallée said, I would be very surprised if this turned out to be just extraterrestrials.
Well, I'm thinking that he did so much investigation that he came to some conclusions.
Could be.
And then as a result of that, changed his focus, and I'll ask him.
Yeah.
How's that?
Sure.
I'll ask him. So you're saying there are many, many, many abductees, and most of them, not all, but most of them are abducted again and again and again all their life. Is that true?
That would appear to be the pattern, yes.
Starts when they're infants?
Very young, before they've set their mind as to how the world works. That's why I think they take them very young, because once you're 20 years old, your worldview is set, and the aliens would need giant rubber boots and a big giant shovel to try to get an idea down in through all the garbage to impress something. So they take the kids very, very young. The same as we have this phenomena that takes place with musicians being extremely interested in UFOs. A lot of them are experiencers. And I say, my guess is that the reason that the aliens are so interested in musicians is they influence children between the ages, say 10 and 25 years old when they're looking for new ideas.
Grant?
So the idea is to get people before they've set their worldview.
Right.
If you want to get an idea across to change consciousness for the next generation.
Grant, do you know David Jacobs?
Yeah, I know of him. I've never talked to him. No.
Okay. While you are telling us that they're giving us a message of oneness, conciliation, repair of the planet, all these very important things, there are people like Jacobs who believe that these creatures may be fooling us, that they're presenting the front that you have described.
Yep.
But in fact, they're not friendly at all, and they represent a very great danger potentially to us.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you say what to that?
I say that's General Colin Powell standing up at the UN and trying to convince us that the Iraqis had weapons of mass destruction. It's the us versus them. It's this idea that the Chinese were our enemies. It was the blacks were the problem and the Jews were the problems and the Russians were the problem, and now it's the aliens. It's another enemy.
Grant, that's pretty harsh. You're essentially saying it's a great lie.
It's the idea that it's separation. You either believe in oneness, or you believe in the fact that everybody's separate, that everybody's individual. And when you get the individual idea, then if you take the aliens, like what evidence is there that the aliens are going to take over the planet? They're going to do everything. Like people will say, okay, they're here to take the planet. And I say, if you actually take a look, there's very little physical about them. They don't wear clothes. People say they're here to get our gold. They don't wear jewelry. They don't really have any furniture. They don't seem to have any interest in anything physical at all. They seem to be here doing this hybrid thing. And people can say, okay, eventually they're going to take over the world and they're going to eat us or they're going to do whatever. And I say, if you take a look at the download stuff, if you take a look at 43% of people are being downloaded, or you have 11% of people that report that they're being allowed to fly the flying saucer, if they're going to take us over and eat us or whatever they're going to do, why don't they do it? And why are they teaching people to fly the ship? Why are they downloading mathematical and technical material into people's heads if they're just going to take us over?
Well,
there seems to be something else going on behind the scenes.
Well, don't forget to serve man.
To serve man?
Yes. You don't remember to serve man?
No, I don't know what you're talking. I have no idea.
Okay, all right. I'll explain it. There was I believe it was a Twilight Zone episode in which the aliens came down and they made a great speech and a great deal out of how they were going to serve man. And then at the very end, Grant, it turned out that to serve man was actually a cookbook.
Yeah. You're going to be served up on a McDonald's on the far side of the moon, a human McNuggets. Yeah,
you got it.
If it happens, I'll believe it. I don't see any indication that there's this evil empire.
Okay, I'm not saying there is, Grant. I'm just saying that you seem to believe wholeheartedly that they are well-intentioned, trying to help us, trying to prevent nuclear warfare, trying to help us with the planet, whatever. And I hope, Grant, it's true. But I'm just saying, don't you have a little bit of you that says, but, well, who was it? Ronald Reagan said something about trust but verify.
Well, that's the idea. This separation thing, that we have enemies, that everybody that we are the good guys, and we're always the good guys, and there's all these bad guys, and everybody's out to get us, and it may be true, but what I'm saying is that I think people have to start explaining. Why are people getting downloads? Mm-hmm. What is going on? Why are they downloading people with information? Why are they allowing people to fly ships? When I did my first consciousness lecture, within 1 year, I had 24 people come to me that told me this thing, that they were flying the ship, and most of them were women. And I say, if you believe in the evil alien thing, well, then you have to look at the fact that if you're a woman in Saudi Arabia, you cannot drive a car. It's illegal for you to drive a car.
Right.
But if you're a Saudi Arabian woman and you get abducted by the aliens, they'll not let you drive the car. They'll let you fly the flying saucer, no insurance, no license, nothing. So why are they allowing people? Why is there something going on behind the scenes that's being ignored? Now, maybe Jacobs is right. Maybe eventually they're going to pop up and, we're going to get served for lunch, or they're going to take over the planet or
that's
do
not
whatever.
fair. Jacobs didn't really say that.
Well,
he
well,
just thinks that there's
an idea. Sure.
There's a possibility they could be not our friends.
He calls them the threat. He wrote the book, The Threat.
Thank you.
Same as
Yeah.
Bud Hopkins.
Right.
Bud Hopkins talked about the intruders.
Right.
That they're intruders. They're really not evil, but they're just intruding in our lives, and they should just go away and leave us alone.
Okay, listen, I've got a wormhole message here from Doug in Michigan who wants to ask you this.
Yeah.
All right, he says, Grant. One of the big things that aliens always seem to show abductees is how we are destroying our planet. That would indicate to me the aliens are very likely us from the future.
Possible. I mean, if you take a look at quantum physics, there is no time and space. I mean, it's all a deck of cards on top of each other. I mean, so time and space, we're getting into hypotheticals that are hard to really answer. I mean, it could be. That was the message from Rendlesham Forest that Jim Peniston got through his Touching the Craft, the fact that this was future coming back. I mean, it's highly possible, but my guess would be that there really is no time and space. That if you talk to Julia Asante, who from Columbia, who's done some work on this, she basically says that you can basically talk with your future lives and past lives and have a meeting. And so this idea of time and space, a lot of this is illusion. Physical world is illusion. Time and space are illusion. We believe a lot of stuff that really the aliens are showing us this really isn't true. When you start looking at what they're doing, we start realizing that we've sort of got some beliefs that maybe need changing. And that's why I'm just saying you've got to start looking at what the experiencers are saying. They're telling us some important stuff about what's going on, that you can go through walls, that telepathy is true, that people are getting downloads, they're getting information, they're getting inventions and stuff like that. I think we got to start looking at this kind of stuff, and maybe it's true that there is some sort of threat, but I think it's more profitable to look at what the experiences are actually saying.
Look, I was just asking if you had a sliver of you that had doubts, if there was a little bit of you that
I did before. The more I look at it, the less doubt, the less I believe in the evil alien. I was right with you maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. If you ask the experiencers and you say, how many believe they're evil, only 10% of experiencers believe that they're evil.
All right. Well, there are many who describe many. In other words, that there are many different alien species here.
Yes.
Are they all here to help?
Well, I don't know. There's got to be thousands of different aliens here. All I know is the main ones, like the Greys and the main where you get the abduction phenomena. You may have a lot of aliens that are here who aren't interacting. The only ones that we can really judge are the ones that are interacting with us, which would be the Greys and the reptilians and the humanoid types.
There are many types, though. And it's hard to know if they're all our friends. It's even hard to know whether they're warring with each other or not.
Okay, again, this is to me is doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If Art, if you're telepathic and you can predict the future, and I'm telepathic and I can predict the future, how can you possibly have a war between you and me? If I can tell what you're going to do and you can tell what I'm going to do, how can you have a war? I know who's going to win the war. I know I'm going to die. Why would I start the war? The idea of telepathic beings, that's the whole idea about telepathy, is that if a politician stands up, you know when he's lying. It's very hard to start war if you're telepathic. This doesn't make any sense to me that telepathic
usually
beings,
with politicians, if they're standing, they're lying.
Yeah. So, I mean, telepathy is a very important thing. If you're telepathic, I believe you have to understand that everything's connected. And that's the whole thing. That's the Ronald Reagan thing, how the world would unite if we were facing a threat from an alien nation. This whole idea that that everything is connected. Telepathy means we're connected. That we all are a part of a hologram. It's a big, huge hologram, and that if I want to read your mind, I go. Your everything is in me, is in you. I just go into me and get your information from the hologram. And so everything is that. If you're telepathic. In fact, Ben Rich, part of my download was a statement made by Ben Rich when Jan Hartson, the international director of MUFON, asks him. He said, Ben, he had a very close encounter at 9 years old. He became fascinated with UFOs, wanted to be an electrical engineer, wanted to know about propulsion. So he asked Ben Rich, who ran Lockheed Skunk Works, SR-71, U-2, the drones, all that kind of stuff. He said to Ben, I need to know, how did they get here? How does it work? And Ben turned around and he said, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And Jan Hartson said, I didn't expect a question. So he said, I replied, it means everything in time and space is connected. And Ben Rich said, that's how it works. Walked out of the building, got in his car and drove away. And you get this over and over again, this whole thing about the connectedness, that they may actually, like entangled space, they may actually be able to just move through time and space like an entangled particle. They're in one part of the universe and then they can move to the other part instantaneously if everything's connected. If they're just moving through a hologram, that's why I say that you've got to start looking at what the experiencers are saying and look at this from a different perspective, from quantum physics and this kind of stuff. And you start to understand that they just understand better how the universe works, that we're making a lot of false assumptions about how things work. And the aliens are not magic. They just understand a few things that we don't know. And one of the key ones is this whole idea. The difference between us and an alien, the main difference is we are not telepathic and they are.
All right. I guess very quickly, because we're about out of time here for the hour, and I want to get to calls next hour. You ready for calls, by the way?
Sure.
Okay. Do you believe that when Ronald Reagan said what he said, he was saying that to, in effect, prepare us?
I would just be guessing. I can tell you that Ronald Reagan had 2 UFO sightings.
Right.
He had the one where he chased it in the plane. He had the other one where he was coming from Sacramento down to a cocktail party in Los Angeles. Steve Allen, the comedian, was there. So was Lucille Ball. And Lucille Ball told Shirley MacLaine that he had interacted with an alien.
Gotcha. All right. Hold tight.